Welcome to Torah Smash, the podcast for nerdy Jews, where our lives of Jewish learning collide with our love of nerd culture. In each episode, we discuss what we lovingly call a Torah Smash, which we have defined as a beautiful collision of one thing from the world of Judaism with another from nerd culture. I am Barak Malkin, and joining me today are
Ethan Lane Miller.
RDY.
Krusty the Clown. Fabrice Sapolsky.
our guest for today's episode is Fabrice Sapolsky. Fabrice, yeah, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really impressed you went and did the clown makeup too. You know this is a podcast, right?
I know you look really good, but no one's going to see it.
Fabrice describes himself as a unicorn, a versatile creator who writes, draws, designs, edits, publishes, and sometimes sleeps. He has released 5 creator-owned graphic novels in the last 5 years, including fan favorites Intertwined, One Hit Wonder, and Lady Bird, through his inclusive publishing company Fair Square Comics. His creator-owned series Intertwined includes the first ever Asian Jewish character in comics. He's also known to general audiences as the co-creator and co-writer of the Spider-Man noir character for Marvel Comics with David Hein, and has worked for many companies such as Heavy Metal, DC Comics, Soleil, Humanoids, and Ablaze. Originally born in France, Fabrice moved to the United States in 2015 and now lives in New York. In 2023, Fabrice partnered with the Center for Jewish History to help create Juice, the Jewish Comics Experience, the only Jewish-themed comic book convention in the world. Welcome, Fabrice.
Yay, Fabrice.
Welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
I'm so happy. Long time coming.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a very cool resume.
Well, I left a few things out. I worked on a ton of children's interest magazine when I was younger.
Oh, very fun. So the holiday of Purim starts later this month. For my friend Jason, who's not Jewish, Purim is the one where we eat hamantashens, those delicious triangle cookies with filling to represent the hat of Haman, the villain of the story.
Ooh.
Actually,
do you want to? You can correct it. That's okay. We're doing background. Go ahead.
so hamantashen, really, tashen is pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's not ears.
It's, Ozne Haman in Hebrew is Haman's ear, which is what they're called in Hebrew. But in Yiddish, they're called hamantashen, which is Haman pockets. But we can play around with this later, but the correct flavor for hamantashen is actually not one of my favorite flavors, though I do like it. It's poppy.
I
That's
love
my favorite.
Pop. That's the best.
That's my
filling.
favorite.
The best filling is my sesame ball flavored hamantashen. But other than that, the Yiddish word for poppy is mun. And so if you were to say the in Hebrew is ha. So the poppy pockets is hamuntashen,
That's interesting.
Which means it's the correct flavor to put in your hamantashen.
I love that. I think actually my favorite would be a poppy seed filling with chocolate chips in it.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow,
that's a nice one.
Outrageous.
Someday you'll taste one of my sesame ball hamantashen and you'll be like, oh, these are better.
Okay, bring it on. Absolutely. So we read the story of Purim from a scroll called Esther's Megillah, and it's another one of those, they tried to kill us, we prevailed, let's eat holidays. So for today's episode, I want us to take a look at one of the themes of the Purim story, which comes to us mostly through Queen Esther. When she becomes Queen of Shushan, she hides her Jewish identity. Her uncle Mordecai tells her to keep her identity a secret, and it's not until Haman tells the king that he wants to kill all the Jews that Esther reveals herself to be Jewish. And in doing so, she saves the Jewish people. So what superhero idea do I want to explore today that's tied to this theme of Purim?
I feel like you're leading us towards secret identities.
Yeah, I was going to say
Ish.
all of them.
Yes.
Shapeshifters.
Oh, that's
Ooh.
closer. That's a closer guess.
The Invisible Woman,
Go on.
when she disappears, she's totally hidden from view.
Oh,
Which makes me wonder how she'd be able to see, because vision happens when the light hits your eyes and reacts to it. So if light can't hit her, then how does she see when she's invisible?
Too much science in this sentence.
Yeah, that's all right. So they were all really good guesses, super close. So I'm going to launch us into it. So today we'll be talking about superheroes that can stand right next to you and you wouldn't know they were super.
Oh.
So this was another one of the theme topics.
The humble knight.
The humble. What is that? What's the humble knight?
This is the metaphor of what you just said.
Is that what it is?
You have a superhero that is next to you, and you don't know he's a superhero. So yeah, it's secret identity. It's like Clark Kent being next to you.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah.
Steve Rogers next to you, judging by the wall behind you.
Yeah. So this was another one of those theme topics I took away from my Spertus class with Dr. Jane Shapiro. Hi again, Jane. We watched the Eli talk by Daniel Kaufman called Capping Traditions, a Kippah in a Secular World. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. He shares his path that led to his decision to wear a kippah, and it's fascinating. But it got me thinking about this idea that Queen Esther shows us in the Purim story about what I'll call passive hiding. Esther doesn't have to do anything to hide her Jewishness because nothing about her visual persona can tell others that she is Jewish. For others whose appearance tells the world that they're Jewish, like if they wear a kippah regularly, they may put on a baseball cap over the kippah. And I'll call that active hiding because something has to be done to appear more like those around you. All right, so now that we've defined those terms of passive versus active hiding, let's start with my first question, which is who are some superheroes who passively hide? Meaning, who can walk around freely without having to hide that they're super?
Superman. I mean, when he changes it. Oh, do you mean in
Right,
their...
but he would leave his house in the morning, which Superman isn't, because Superman puts on the glasses and slouches as a way to
Right.
actively hide that he's Superman, right? So
Right.
I don't think he
so
would
you're
count.
saying passive hiding.
Yeah,
not like
who can just be themselves out the door and nobody would know that they're a superhero.
See, I
Does
mean, my
Mystique
first thought
count?
was like firefighters, like thinking very like real life.
Oh, Ethan,
You've such a good heart.
you are correct.
Fabrice, can you bring the nerd back for us?
No, I'd like not to talk about superheroes, but because superhero, like I kind of grew up, I would say Peter Parker, if you want a superhero, like
Yeah.
the most unlikely person that you would look at a superhero. I would even be more nerdy. I would say Franklin Richards.
Oh,
Mhm.
nice.
Yeah, I would say that Spider-Man, right? Peter Parker can leave his house and passively walk around. And it's not until he has to use his powers where he has to actively hide himself, right? Just like Queen Esther was passively just herself without sharing that she was Jewish until she had to use that power of hers to save the Jewish people. So I would agree, Peter Parker and
So
many
that
other.
pretty much means like anyone but Superman who has to dress up to look human, or anyone else whose like skin is tinted like Nightcrawler or Beast or
Thing.
or Thing. Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Or, you know,
I mean,
Galactus.
technically, Superman looks human.
Yeah.
Right, but he has to, if he walked out the door standing straight, no glasses,
Oh.
right? People.
So differentiating superheroes who walk around as themselves and put on the costume to have to be super. So like
right,
Mystique wouldn't count because she has to engage her powers to
correct.
look
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, right. Well, Kill Bill told us how Clark Kent is the costume and Superman is his actual identity.
One of my favorite monologues in modern filmdom.
Can I ask a nerdy question that I might take into Judaism?
Sure.
How much does location have to do with superheroes blending in? So like, you know, how world famous is Superman or Batman outside of Metropolis or Gotham?
News travel fast, you know?
I've been told.
Faster than a speeding bullet?
Ooh, good.
Wait, so where's that question leading us?
To, of all places, Dan Nichols, who I've had the pleasure of meeting a couple of times. And I've always wondered, like, what is it like being Dan Nichols, stepping into an environment where you have crowds of Jewish teenagers screaming for you, and then an hour later you're in the airport and no one has any idea who you are?
Oh, that's interesting. For my friend Jason, can you just share who Dan Nichols is?
Yeah, Dan Nichols is a Jewish musician who is one of many who tours the camp circuits, among other things.
I actually have a real world experience with what you're describing.
Ooh,
because
please.
From 1997 to 2001, anytime Bear from Bear in the Big Blue House appeared in person west of the Mississippi, I was in the costume. And that meant So it was. I worked.
Sure
for
sounds like a Muppet to me.
I know, right?
How
I'm
is
like,
this the first time
totally.
this is coming out? You were
So
Bear from Bear in the Big Blue House?
just in live performances, I never was allowed
Oh,
to speak
just in live
because-
performances, guys.
Tell me you did like Big Bear on Ice.
No. I can't skate. But I would like appear at conventions and one birthday party, but was for a Henson grandchild. And it was, it was a job. I was an actor for a little while. So during that time, if there was a big convention or, like they were almost precursors to like DisneyCon, but you go and you wave to children and you're, saying hello to people and you're famous when you're in the costume. Like you're Bear, like the kids are all over you and the parents are like, "Oh, let's take a picture." And you're a celebrity. And then you go on break and you're some dude walking around in jeans and a t-shirt and no one knows who you are. Like I'm just a guy and I look weird maybe because I'm not carrying a goodie bag from convention like everybody else is, but and I'm walking around with the guy who used to be walking around with the bear. So some people recognize that, but it's totally incognito when I'm out of the bear suit.
Fabrice, you have this too, because your resume is extremely impressive. I can only assume that you've done cons across the country.
30
right?
a year
Yeah.
for the past 3 years.
Yeah. So you sit at a table, people come over to you, see your name, see your work, and they ask you to sign stuff. And then you head off to the floor to look around and explore. Are you recognized on the floor, or do you have that experience where when you're not sitting with your name behind you, nobody really
So
knows?
this is a very deep and interesting question that I never get. So thank you for asking it.
Yeah.
My experience, unfortunately, is that 99.9% of people don't know who I am. They don't know my face. They can't pronounce my name properly or my first name. Actually, my last name is easy to pronounce in America compared to my first name, whereas in France, my home country, is the other way around.
Wow.
So it's really interesting. And over the years, I've tried different setups. And I can speak about the last convention I was at, which was last weekend at Emerald City in Seattle, where for the first time, I did not display my name. Like my name was not on the banner behind me. It was just the company, Fair Square Comics. And I wanted to see what would happen. No one asked me for my name. I was there to promote the books that we are selling and producing. So no one asked me for my name, except two people who came and knew who I was from the previous years. And when I have my name, you have different people who have different reaction. Some are like, "Are you the person? Are you that person?" Like referring to the name that is on the banner. It's like, "Are you him?" And the second thing is when they discover my credentials that are on my banner, like, "Is that true?"
Oh no, God, that was the last guy. Let me cross that out.
Exactly. And the problem is that the minute they discover that I was affiliated with Marvel Comics for a minute, 16 years, the minute they discover that, it sanitizes the conversation and there's nothing I can talk about except this, which is a little upsetting because I'm not a one-trick pony, as you mentioned.
Yeah, you've got a lot of stuff. That's so interesting. And I
tried to hide my name and I tried to hide my resume because when you're on the floor like this, it's never about the ego. It's about what you're here for. And what I'm here for is to promote my work, but also the work of other underrepresented artists and creators that I publish through my company.
Yeah, well, I would imagine that that's got to be true across the board with many creative artists because people see your work, they don't see your face, right? Aside from Stan Lee, I would assume that the majority population would not be able to pick out in a lineup any other major comic book creator across the board.
I mean, some of us are pretty famous, like their face is famous,
right,
for various reasons. Either they came before everyone and they've been known. They were in magazines, they were on TV, They were like, so people know Todd McFarlane. Like you see Todd McFarlane, you know Todd McFarlane. You know Frank Miller, you see Frank Miller, you recognize him. You see Mike Mignola, you know who it is. So there are some personalities, some quote unquote celebrities in our business where you know their face. But most of us, you don't know their face. But when you have the name, then the second issue happens, which is you automatically, if you were connected in one way, shape, or form to a company that is bigger than you and is a corporation, you become a proxy. And then people are not interested in you at all. They're interested in characters. They're interested in the brands. And that's what I'm fighting against. I'm fighting against because it erases the creators from the equation.
That's so.
We have that same thing because people are always like, Torah Smash brand is so big. And people are like, oh yeah, are you the initials guy or the three names guy or the one who's like the president?
Yeah.
I need that on a shirt.
Yeah. That's so interesting that even when you have your name, you're still then trying to overcome this other identity that people have created for you. It's not even your active or passive hiding now. It's now you're actively trying to present yourself. So let me move on to that. That's a good tie into my next question that I had, which was, these superheroes, they don't remain hidden throughout their entire story, right? People that are passively hiding. So what are the situations that cause them to reveal their true identity? Like in this case, that they have powers, right? Or
honesty.
Mm-hmm.
The need to use them to a loved one. Say it again, Fabrice.
Lying is bad, folks.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. The need to use them, like some emergency happens near a loved one, and you're like, I've got no choice except to lift this car off of them with one hand.
Yeah.
And also, like, no one talks about the fact that if you're a superhero, you still can be a terrible actor or a terrible liar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any superheroes? I don't know if I can't think of any that in their stories try to hide who they are, but are that like terrible actor and really can't. Like, I'm surprised Lois Lane takes so long all the time.
Yeah,
the smartest journalist, smartest reporter of the Daily Planet.
Yeah, doesn't get it right away.
Like, that's how sexist that comic was in the 40s.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Are there any heroes that go out of their way to try to are actively passively hiding and are just terrible at it? And people going, wait a minute, is that felt familiar? I can't think of any.
Peter Parker gets caught mid-change all the time.
Yeah.
Like pulling his pants up or down and like in the back of an alley and like, sorry.
Well, I remember reading there was an issue I read that was he explained that he always takes his mask off last in case somebody ever catches him changing, that his mask always comes off last just so that he can stay hidden when something like that happens. And it happens to him enough that he keeps his mask on.
Yeah.
But there's a pattern with him. Why do you do that in the streets?
Well,
when you can go up to the roof.
Oh, that's a good point. He can hide up, right? And Superman, you could have done the same thing, but he chose phone booths for some reason on the ground level. You could have leaped entire buildings.
Change in the air. No one would see it.
Nobody would know.
Be naked up in the air. No one would see it.
But then where would he put his costume? Where would he put his Clark Kent costume?
He's going to keep it in the phone booth.
Well, I'll leave it to your imagination.
I always assumed that early on that he had everything underneath and he would go into the booth, change and swap levels. So his suit became underneath his costume and his costume then reversed because he never leaves it in the phone booth.
I always imagine his suit like super compressed and just like on a little backpack thing.
Oh, just like there was a theory like that in The Flash that, the Flash takes his costume out of his ring, which is extremely interesting, right?
Yeah.
But then people will ask, but what does he do with his other set of clothes?
Right.
And like, he puts them back in the ring. Of course.
Well, how does that? But the suit was made for that purpose. The clothes, he doesn't buy his clothes from those stores. Unless what a lot of effort for your entire wardrobe, right?
It's like Reed Richards' particles. He invented this fabric that makes it possible to play with everything on a molecular level.
And so he has to get all of his outfits from Star Labs,
right? So
have y'all ever watched Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog?
Yes.
I enjoy the contrast of Dr. Horrible not really being evil, but eventually being evil, contrasted with him in a laundromat or Captain Hammer. Does he even do we even see if he has a secret identity? Because I feel like Captain Hammer, he's just a bloke with a t-shirt with a hammer on it. Like, I feel like there's no way Captain Hammer could actually go incognito. And then we got that contrasted with Dr. Horrible washing his undies at the laundromat.
Yeah, well, he'd be one of the superheroes that, right? Captain Hammer doesn't wear a mask. So it would be like the MCU's Iron Man, where when he is out and about, everybody knows that's Iron Man, outside of his mask.
So
But he has the identity of Tony Stark.
Yeah, Tony Stark is also famous. So I guess that's an example that doesn't work
Yeah.
also. And even like Steve Rogers, to a certain extent, like to anyone who knew Steve Rogers before Super Soldier Serum, with the height gain and the muscle mass, would know something is afoot.
Yeah, I just read Captain America White recently, and in the issue, oh yeah, you read it recently too?
I'm actually not finished with it yet.
Oh, okay. Okay. Spoiler alert, maybe. I don't know.
It's fine.
That at the end, one of the people states that he figured out that it was Steve and Bucky because of different reasons, but for the most part, nobody knew in that issue, and for some other Captain America issues, that Steve was Captain America and that Bucky was his sidekick. And so I would say that for some of the issues that doesn't apply to Steve Rogers, that he would be the passive person walking around unless you knew who he was as a kid and you're like, wow, you really buffed up.
Yeah.
So into the war piece, I agree, the life-threatening situations, right? Situations where you're put into fear or have to be brave. I also said that you'd have to reveal your identity out of either passion or pride or shame. Any one of those situations could have done it. Any other thoughts on that one?
There's also the really stupid revelation, like in Superman 2, where he trips on the bearskin rug and sends his hand into the fire and like,
right.
Oh, no, nothing. No. Oh, whoops. Like, come on. I know that you're pretending to be bumbling, but you don't actually have to be bumbling.
Well, that's one of the cases where you wish that comics would stay comics.
Yes.
So aside from Queen Esther, I couldn't think of this. I don't know if any of you know. Are there any other Jewish characters that passively hide their true identity? I think there probably are. No, in the biblical stories.
Okay.
Right?
We all have to do. I mean, this day and age, I mean, this might be getting a little heavier than you want, but this day and age, anti-Semitism is popping up everywhere. I had someone commenting nasty things to me in an online poker game recently. So just because my profile has a little Israeli flag under it, but walking around, even in Chicago, like I will very often take off my kippah altogether rather than throwing a baseball hat on these days because I don't want people to see it. And I've never been one to wear jewelry, so I don't have to like tuck in my star like a lot of people do. But we've said to my kids, like, please tell us what's going on. And if you're, do you wear these things out and about, or do you hide it? Do people know you're Jewish? And they all three of them have different ways of dealing with it.
That's very interesting. Like of course, I've been impacted just like everybody by the situation, especially since I have very, very close family, both in France and in Israel. And what's interesting is that I see a lot of American Jews thinking that sky fell on them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to say anything because this is the situation I've known all my life. Like when you grow up in a country like France where anti-Semitism was never gone, never left. It was always there. It's funny because it triggered memories from when I was 5 or 6 years old and I was already bullied because I was Jewish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so this is the kind of things that you learn to live with, unfortunately.
Yep.
When you're in diaspora and when you are the minority, you have to always remember to have a extra layer of awareness, a spider sense, to pay attention to everything around you because it can happen at any time. I remember I had a friend when I was growing up, his first jobs was at a bank. And he was a Modern Orthodox guy and he couldn't wear a kippah there. So he had a kippah made of hair. So he had this kind of hair on top of his hair. And
like a toupee? Like a mini toupee?
Yeah, similar. I've actually heard of this before. Yeah.
Yes. And that was made like exactly matching his hair color. Yeah. So it would have his kippah.
Wow.
But he would be invisible to the Gentiles.
I've never heard of that. So interesting. This was actually one of my...
I'm talking about something that happened like 35 years ago.
Yeah.
So
let me ask you this. When do you all present yourself passively Jewish in the world or actively Jewish in the world? When does that shift for each of you?
Well, I had a choice today, actually. This weekend, I'm going to a bat mitzvah. And so I swung by Target to buy a card and a gift card. And the nice person at the register asked me how much money to put on the card. And I said 18. And they stopped, looked at me, and like visibly asked, what? Why that amount? And I figured I'm already buying a bat mitzvah card anyway. Like, what have I got to lose here? And so I gave them a 1 minute like lesson on 18 and Chai, and they were just like, oh, okay, cool. And like it easily could have been, oh, okay. And when's your turn with the space laser?
Yeah. I think I have a mixture, right? I would say I actively decide I wear a Jewish star necklace, right? But I tuck it in. So there's a mix of like active versus passive. But we have mezuzot on our house that faces outwards and such. Right. This wasn't jumping off topic, already. I actually jumped ahead because I wanted to share a post that my cousin had sent to me that their Rabbi Yaakov Sachs of the High Center in Dix Hills, New York, shared back at the beginning of November 2023. So I wanted to share that because that ties into this really well. He had written on their Facebook page, quote, "A couple of people have asked me as to whether they may remove their mezuzah from their front door as a temporary measure to ensure their safety." And then he lists 4 different categories in the related point. He says, 1, historically, hiding one's faith has never protected the Jew from the sick mob. 2, spiritually, a mezuzah is there to protect one's home from harm. 3, practically, what do we hide next? Our Stars of David, our kippas, those are synagogues, surgically replace foreskin. Hiding is not a good plan. 4, psychologically, this is exactly what the savages want us to do. They want us to run scared. We need them to be scared of us and not the other way around. Be proud. We are not the sick ones. Good must trump evil. And then he ends his post asking if anybody needs more mezuzot for their home. And it was, this was, post October 7th, right? Around Halloween time. And it was a discussion, right? Do you actively hide or do you passively remain present? Or, what do you do in that? And it's such a big conversation all around. So
I can talk about my own experience. And by the way, I don't really agree on everything that was just on that post.
That's totally fine.
Last part. But I can say this. When I was a kid, my parents and my grandparents on both sides had their mezuzah inside because we were afraid. And my grandmother on my dad's side, she was deported. She went to the death camp. She came back and she never wanted to have a mezuzah outside. And my parents followed the same model, especially since the other side of my family on my mom's side, they were also like traumatized. They lived in Algeria and they were part of the people who were like shown the door when the independence of the country happened. And so they were also like kind of traumatized by this and they didn't want to relieve any kind of trauma. So they put it inside. Strangely, I think I came out as a Jewish person when I moved to the United States.
Oh, really?
Yes. I mean, as long as I can remember, I always had my mezuzah outside in every home I inhabited. But when I came to the US, I really made it official. Like I started posting Jewish stuff. I started cracking Jewish jokes. There was, of course, the first Brooklyn Jewish Comic Con that happened in 2016 and in 2018 that I co-created with Fred Polaniecki of Kol Israel in Brooklyn. And now there's Juice that I'm doing with Miriam Mora. So I can't go back. You can't take it back. Yeah. Once you're out, you're out. So you really have to show your colors. And especially in my everyday job as a publisher, I'm doubling and tripling down. Like when people are trying to scare us, I'm putting out more Jewish content outside because I believe that one of the roots of the problem is misrepresentation, miscommunication, and lack of information that we are also collectively responsible for, because it's easy to not say anything about your culture because they would not understand. Right. I disagree. I think we have a responsibility when we are in diaspora to also inform, educate, and make ourselves available for those kind of questions, sometimes uncomfortable, sometimes borderline racist and anti-Semitic, but we have to face them because we can't create a new anti-Semitism by a lack of answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In so many words, that's what very quickly went through my mind at Target today. where I was like, I have the moment, I have an opportunity to share with someone that I am a real Jewish person living in Austin, Texas. And here's just a little fact of our life. And like all these thoughts went through my head. What if they respond and it goes all anti-Semitic? What if someone behind me in line responds and goes all anti-Semitic? Which is not to compare that with like threats of physical harm that someone might face. Like I think there's a continuum here of what does it mean to be out, to show our Judaism, to not show our Judaism. But it felt like a very small scale moment of like me making a choice to be like, yeah, I'm Jewish. Let's talk about it.
What's interesting is that you need to make that choice in 2024 in a way that you might not have had to make in 2022. And
In America.
In America. Thank you. Yes. And I want to respond to the rabbi's post as well.
Yeah.
Because there's an interesting little teaching in Masechet Shabbat, the Talmudic tractate about Shabbat, where they're talking about Hanukkah. And I don't have the exact page because I didn't look it up because I wanted to listen, but there's a teaching about the Chanukiah and how you're supposed to put it in the window. And they say, except in times of danger. In times of danger, you can bring it farther into the house so that it's not like out there on display. They don't say don't use the Chanukiah, and they don't say don't make it invisible, but they like make it more subtle. And
Does it define what that danger means?
No.
That's a large spectrum.
Right. But I think there's an implication of as to what it means. And I think they always have to be coy when they're talking about that because some of the people that they're worried about are reading this stuff that they're publishing. So there's no specific mention of danger, and probably because there doesn't need to be, because there's always danger, like you said.
Yeah. I think my mindset shifted when I had kids, that after we had our first son, there was a spike in anti-Semitism, and we seriously debated bringing them as an inside. And we had talked about it, and I said, I don't want to end up being the parent who shows their kid how to hide. And I don't think we were not in the same situation that other countries are in. And so I felt comfortable enough. And that's sort of what drives a lot of my decisions today in conversations about what I'm doing is how would I want this presented to my kids and how I hope that they stand up and be proud.
I want to say just one little quick thing. As Jews in diaspora, it's easy to give in to fear, especially in times like we're living right now. I remember 25 years ago, the first person in my family who moved to Israel, and you're going to see where I'm going, is my first cousin. And his name is, I'm not joking, Mordechai Shushan. Yes.
That is
wow, what a coincidence.
And yeah. And so he told me, why are you worried about me in Israel? I have an army behind me. I'm worried about you because you have no one. And now
That's
after October 7th, it's everything is like kind of like, are we even in a weird, bad way? But it is concerning.
Yeah. This is
a lot
great.
to think about.
A whole lot.
So I love this conversation. This is great. I want to tie it back into the nerd side and revisit that initial question and see if any perceptions have changed regarding the superheroes who passively hide. Like if you have anything that sticks out or any favorites of those characters, right? I'll start us off and just say, we didn't mention Kitty Pryde, but Kitty Pryde is passive on both fronts. And there's I know we talked about this with Isaac Brinjagard Bialik, the issue where she shares that she's both Jewish and she's a mutant. And just looking at her, you couldn't tell about either. And that's sort of what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Can I say something again?
Yeah.
There are a lot of debates within the community and within also the Jewish nerd community, I hope, about how many Jewish or supposedly Jewish characters are passing. Their attitude is not Jewish. Their behavior is not Jewish. It's not because you have a Star of David around your neck or a menorah in the back of your living room that makes you a Jewish person. There are artifacts, but how about you as a character? Were you modeled as a Jewish person? Were you, let me put it that way, were the characters created and raised as Jewish persons?
Yeah.
Like, as in, is your maker made you Jewish, or did your maker made you a character and added some Jewish artifacts in the back?
Oh, give me a hot
I mean,
take.
you're going
Who is?
into
that goes back to what you're saying about passive.
Yeah.
Because
you're
the-
also going into like matrilineal versus patrilineal descent. And
there's
like
also that,
what
and
leads to
that's one of the reason why I created the character of Leah Hai-Chan in Intertwined, the Last Jewish Daughter of Kaifeng, because I wanted to portray a character that is 100% Jewish. And the first time you meet her, she's praying in a synagogue. And it's not because I'm particularly religious. I am not. I'm pretty secular now. I used to be Orthodox. Can you believe that? I was Orthodox for over 20 years. But it was important to me that viscerally, she's Jewish, acts Jewish, breathes Jewish. Everything is Jewish about her. And there's a scene in the book where the first thing that she does when she gets home is to kiss the mezuzah.
Oh, that's right. Because I think this ties into the Thing's origin, where for years was not outwardly Jewish, right? And there were rumors and hums and guesses, and then finally they came out. And now today's Thing is like a rabbi teaching the whole neighborhood kind of.
But you
Jewish.
can thank Dan Slott for that. He did a great job, kind of like giving more Jewish persona to the Thing. And Jack Kirby would never answer that question.
I didn't know that. Wait, hold on. I want to get Fabrice's hot take. Who is, aside from the Thing who we just talked about, was made Jewish, felt like he was made Jewish later? Who do you feel are Jewish characters that were sort of given that fact afterwards and made Jew? Right, Moon Knight. We talked Moon Knight earlier, where he was created as a Jewish character from the get-go. Who do you think, hot take, is a Jewish character who really isn't a Jewish character?
Batwoman.
Sure, I'll take that one.
Ragman.
Really?
Reread the comics.
I will.
Except for declaring that he comes from a schmata maker, he's not really Jewish.
Well, there's also different iteration of
origin
of the characters. There's one that is Irish Catholic. So, at one point,
right, his background wasn't solidified enough that somebody else was like, oh, Irish Catholic, of course. Like,
yeah. There's also Casper, the Black Panther. In the run from Christopher Priest, there's a brief period where T'Challa is not the Black Panther, is this cop called Casper. I don't remember his last name. And he's half black, half Jewish. And which is funny because this is not how we should say it. He's black and Jewish. But at the time, that was how it was presented. And he was for a brief period, and then he became the White Tiger. And then he disappeared.
A White Tiger I've heard of. I had never heard of Casper.
Yeah. There's nothing Jewish in his attitude. Like, he's supposed to be Jewish, but there's nothing Jewish in in the way he behaves.
When you were talking, before we got into the hiding Jewish topic, I was thinking about Shang-Chi and how, you definitely wouldn't know he's a superhero if you were sitting next to him on the bus, but he is of Asian descent and therefore has to deal with things that we don't, because we can't so readily hide our facial features as we can our religious identity.
Shang-Chi was not designed to be a superhero. Shang-Chi was designed to be a warrior.
But in
the 1970s, when the character was created at the height of the Kung Fu craze, it was not designed to be a superhero. You wouldn't see him like saving cats and old ladies. That was not his style. He had a mission.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
That is interesting. I would still say, like, today he's a
superhero. They changed they changed so many characters over the years. So,
sure. Well, Superman only developed flight. He used to leap tall buildings in a single bound.
Yeah, it also used to be blue and had electric powers. So, it also used to be two characters separated by magic.
Yep.
That's great. I want to be conscious of our time. Does anybody else have anything they wanted to throw into this passive versus active identity hiding?
Saying two characters separated by magic immediately brought Billy Batson into my head.
Yeah, but
you've never read Superman Red and Superman Blue? It was in the mid 80s, like 1985, something like that.
Superman Red, wasn't that the one where he landed in Moscow instead?
That's Red Sun.
No.
Red,
that was
Red Sun.
That was that Red Sun. This is different.
Sorry.
Superman Red and Superman Blue, you had like two Superman, like exactly the same, but each one had half the powers of the full Superman. Like one
After
had
the
the
death of
strength
Superman?
and one had the heat vision, and it was different. And
Was
one
that-
had the red costume and one had the blue costume.
Was that caused by a type of crypt? Smallville had an episode where he
No,
was separated
it was-
into two types of himself, essentially.
Right. No, as I remember it, it was caused by, I don't know if it was like a fight against Morgan Le Fay or something. It had to do with magic.
Oh, that makes sense. That's cool.
The Superman 3 had him exposed to like red kryptonite or something like that.
It's interesting how you always go back to the movies.
I do.
Read
And
more
is
comics.
does it upset you that the movies are like masquerading as comic books, even though
Yes, and let me tell you again a quick story. And that's something that really upsets me as a comic book creator at large and a publisher. It's that when you meet someone, and I mean a lot of new people at shows, when you meet someone and they say to you like, "Oh, I love comics." "Oh, okay, what do you read?" "Oh, no, I mean I saw all the movies." And you're like, "But you don't read comics?" "No, I just love the movies, sometimes the video games." And it means only one thing, is that corporations did a great job of separating the medium from the essence of what comics are. And that's good and bad news. The good news is that non-superhero comics becomes more relevant because we get our industry back. We are the comics. But also superhero takes the biggest share of the spotlight, and that is a problem.
I will say that I do like the fact that you have repeatedly waved this flag a couple times, because without comic books, I would not be the reader I am today.
Thank you.
Nice. All right, this was great. And I want to end this by asking, what's the lesson from Queen Esther's situation? The whole story of Purim is based out of different scenarios of hiding who you truly are, and on the opposite end, standing up for who you truly are. And I think we can agree that both are very hard to do. We are not going to tell you how to present yourself, but what we do want you to remember is to just be true to yourself. The main point is be who you are, use your abilities to help others when you can, and stand up for what you believe in. Oh, I guess that's 3 points. How appropriate. Fabrice, this was awesome. I'm so glad you were able to join us. I want to give you a chance to give any shout outs or plugs that you'd like to leave out in the podcast world in perpetuity.
Yes, so that's great. The first thing that I want to say is we are running a Kickstarter right now up until March 24th for a book that is extremely important to us called Mutiny Black Girl Magic. And it's a wonderful sci-fi story that we call Star Wars meets The Wiz. That is entirely created by a team of Black female creators. So very important, very diverse, beautiful. And I'm contributing, I mean, of course, as the publisher, but also as cover artist. I drew a variant cover for the book. So if you can go to Kickstarter and type Mutiny Black Girl Magic and support us, that's great. And on top of that, I want to mention one book that my company, Fair Square Comics, just released called I Run to Make My Heart Beat, which was released late February and tells the story of this novelist called Rachel Kahn. That's the name of the author. And she's telling her life story that is 99% her life story. And it's a coming of age story. And she is an athlete, a law graduate, and she's Black, Jewish, and Muslim. And believe me, this book is very Jewish. So you need to discover that book. I Read to Make My Heart Beat from Fair Square Comics, everywhere books are sold. And last but not least, you can find everything on the socials at either at Fabrice Sapolsky or at Fair Square Comics. So Fabrice Sapolsky is F as in fun, Abrice, and Sapolsky is S as in Superman, Apolsky.
Awesome.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Fabrice. Awesome.
Yeah, Fabrice, thank you. This was
Thank
great.
you for having me.
Please come back again. This was fantastic. I hope you enjoyed.
Whenever you invite me, I'll be there.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that'll do it for this episode of Torah Smash. Our fiscal sponsor is Jewish Creativity International. Our theme music was created by Sean Fogel. You can check out Sean's bands and studio work at www.thesleepywest.com. This episode was supported in part by the novel Vashti's Daughter by Raven West. A modern Purim story, Vashti's Daughter centers around book publisher Anna Stein, who discovers a mysterious manuscript that transports her back in time where she learns she is the reincarnated daughter of Queen Vashti. Anna must break an ancient curse put on her to fulfill a vow she made centuries ago to reveal to the world the actual heroine of the whole Megillah and bring Anna true love and happiness in the present. Vashti's Daughter is available in paperback and Kindle ebook on Amazon. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to rate and review us wherever you listen. It helps others find us and is an excellent way to support the podcast. We want to hear from you and continue today's nerdy discussion. Go to torahsmash.com to find where to connect with us online, purchase swag from our store, support us with a donation, find previous episodes, and more. And what material should heroes make their costumes out of if they want to stand out? Polyester.
I can be funny. There's
Yeah.
also Casper, the
Friendly ghost.
this guy.